So I'm here today with my friend Carol Silverman. Carol is in New York, and you flew to Los Angeles for the West Hollywood show where we had your piece installed and people were able to do it. It was a surprise hit in that everybody who came out of it said, "That's my favorite piece so far. I love that piece." You went for ice cream with Stephanie on Santa Monica Boulevard. What don't you do? I mean, what are we going to do with you? Let's talk about this extraordinary piece that you made called Belongings, that is about picking up objects and hearing stories about them. How did you come to this piece, and what does it mean to you?
Well, the story is based on my mother's life and on the discovery that I made after she died of a lot of photographs and documents that told the story that she was born in Germany and deported to an internment camp before she came to the United States, which I did not know. I knew she was born in Germany, but I didn't know the rest of it. And I still don't know most of it because she's gone. And, it was something I thought about a lot, and how to tell that story, because I think a lot of people have discoveries that they make after someone's gone from their things, from the things they leave behind. And then it was something a lot of people could kind of relate to and identify with. And I thought about writing a book. I thought about just writing a memoir. I thought about making a movie. But none of that seemed right. It didn't seem as tactile as I felt about these things. And what I do for a living is decorate sets for films and TV shows. So I'm dealing with objects. Like, that's the way I tell stories, is with objects. If you look at any piece of entertainment, all the things in the background are in support of the story of the script. So my way of telling stories is to take those objects and foreground them without anyone else standing in the way of the person experiencing the story. That's the idea behind it.
Yeah, I remember reading the director's statement when you sent it in, and it said, if you see that these objects are low poly, that they're sort of like basic primitive shapes with images, that's intentional. It's not meant to be like literal versions of these objects. And I thought, I wonder what that means. What happens is when you go into the story, you are inside of a designed environment that gives you certain emotional or contextual or historic cues, but not more than that. And there are a series of blocks and cylinders with image on them, and you pick it up, and as soon as you do, it starts to talk to you about that piece. And it was really effective ultimately. And we watched people sort of picking something up. Usually the first thing they do is they throw something to see if it's throwable and if it has physics, no matter how precious the memento. And then they would try to figure out, what do I do from here? Where do I walk? Is there a relationship between one object and the next? And then the room would change. And they said, did I do that? And they thought that they were somehow triggering the difference of going from one room to the next. And so they would start to explore the causality. But in speaking to you, we found out that the room will change on a timer, and it will not care what you're in the process of doing. It's going to move on because time moves on, and we never know when the moment that we have will be over. And I think that's profound. I get chills just thinking about when you told me that, because sometimes we sit here and wallow in our moment and say, I'm so miserable and this sucks, and when are things going to change? Well, sure enough, they will change, and probably not in a moment of your choosing. So it's a piece about the present and really looking around you. But what more do you want to talk about in terms of the timing and how that design and consideration developed for you?
Well, part of the reason that we came to the decision about the timing is that I designed it for LBE, for a location-based experience. I started before the pandemic. So the idea was to do it as an installation. And in an environment like that, you have to let it time out. You could leave people in there to do whatever they want, to see everything, to take, I've actually never timed it, probably take at least an hour. But in a location-based situation, you have to put a stop to it. It has to end so you can have more throughput, because that's always a problem. I'm sure you're aware when you're doing any kind of installation, just people waiting to see things, not getting a lot of people through. And the other consideration is that it is meant to be, it's almost a memento mori, a reminder of your mortality. So time has to move on. It's about someone's life. That life begins and it ends. And you don't have that much control over it. So that's what belongings is about. It's about time moves on, and you can't do everything, and you can't see everything, and you can't hear everything. And that, like you said, that's the greater meaning of it.
Let's talk about essentialism and the soul of objects and things. You may not know this, but I wrote a very long chapter on a book in Immersion about the spirit inside of objects, or the ontology of objects, and how we tend to live in this anthropocentric view of the universe, everything from the perspective of humans. They say, I think, therefore I am, and I think, therefore the universe exists, and because we consider it, it comes into meaning. But there is another movement about object-oriented ontology that looks at how objects in and of themselves have a quantum effect on the universe. And I often think about my grandmother, the sweater that she left for me, or that, the stuffed toy that I've had that was given to me by my mother when I was a child that I still keep, and what it would mean if I suddenly injected an Internet of Things armature device inside of it and piloted it remotely. I know it's a strange thought, but it kind of creeps me out to think of taking an object and all of its lifelong essence and then suddenly reanimating it, because I know that it has something else to it. Talk to me about, and belongings is, in that sense, a complete actualization of that notion that these objects carry story and meaning and life, that they're not just a candlestick, it's not just a postcard, it's not just a pair of shoes. What is your thinking around objects as a set designer, as someone who's created this piece?
There are at least 3 levels to any object, right? There's the making of the actual physical thing, right? There's a life energy of whoever made it in whatever way they did so. If it was handmade, like antiques just contain the life energy of whoever made them. Somebody took time and they made this thing. Mass-produced things maybe have less of that, but someone still was involved. At least one person, maybe a lot more people, were involved in the creation of it at some point in time. And then at least one person has owned it, and it's meant something to that person. It's represented something. They bought it for a reason, and then they got rid of it for a reason. Either they threw it out, or they donated it, or they gave it to someone, or they died and left it behind. And then the next level of that is how other people are going to look at that object. And it might be new to them, or it might belong, in my case, these things belong to my mother. So they stand for something about her to me. So there's just all these levels. And then if you don't know me, so you look at these things and you're getting my interpretation of possibly my mother's interpretation of this thing, like the rolling pin or the frying pan or the mixing bowl. So we use that mixing bowl every Sunday to make scrambled eggs. But you might look at it and be like, well, this is just some old scratched red mixing bowl that my grandmother had one like it. So then maybe it reminds you of your grandmother and what she used her red bowl for. That's kind of,
I can't deal. Like, that's
it's
just,
exhausting.
it's so heavy. I mean, I just went through 2 weeks of hiring a Marie Kondo specialist because I needed to clean out 20 years of stuff from an apartment. And I thought there's no way that a housekeeper or mover is going to help me deal with this. Everything in here that's left is emotional, and all of the work in here is emotional work. And so, yes, that whole Marie Kondo thing of saying, let's thank this for what it did for us, and now let's release it and let it go. It's interesting because once you get that muscle working, it's much easier to just remember how ephemeral and it all is. And for everything that I ascribe to an object, I also have to release that power from it and just be able to say, it's difficult. It's really difficult. Like, I'm not in any way diminishing the value of things because, a receipt, a show ticket, a sock can unlock an entire chain of memories that has been lost in the mind. Or it can evoke a story between two people that can cause a transition, a fundamental one sometimes, understanding locked emotions.
It can. It really can. It's hard. I have every single, at the Met Museum in New York City, they used to give you a little metal button with an M on it whenever you went there. I have every single one of those little metal buttons. And I think Marie Kondo would approve of them because they do spark joy when I look at them. But I mean, like, that's just one thing.
Yeah. So are you a hoarder?
I think hoarders tend to keep just anything that comes into their orbit, I think. I do like to keep things, but I wouldn't say I keep literal garbage.
Right.
I don't have any like dead rats amongst my stuff.
You don't keep dead rats amongst your stuff?
Not so much, no.
That's usually a good sign of mental health, I think. But I don't know. Like, for someone, dead rats might be the whole thing.
It might be. I mean, I do try to move things along and just keep things that maybe are important.
Yeah.
Some value. Like, here's my ocktail. Can you see that? It's a little yarn octopus in a glass.
Oh, it's an ocktail. Well, I mean, those are two great tastes that go great together.
I think so.
First of all, I love octopuses and cephalopods in general. B, I love ones that are made by somebody and crafted. And C, that's a beautiful crystal that you have it in. I mean, it's all happening.
I know, it's got everything.
Honestly, like, the whole theme of our show is underwater, so we'll have to have some ocktails later on. It
fits with the theme. Yeah.
What do you think you've learned from this experience? Is this your first VR? It can't possibly be, but is this your first VR release?
It is actually the first thing that I've actually made and finished, more or less.
Let's talk a little bit about the process for you in making that, not coming at it, I assume, as a developer, because maybe other people will be inspired to think that they can also do it and tell their stories.
I really hope other people would be inspired. I had tried to learn Unity many times, and everybody always said, you need a project, and if you have a reason to use it, then you're going to learn it. And I would not say that I know Unity, because Unity is huge, but I can use it. Like, I can open it up and I can make it do stuff and I can use it. And it's just that thing where you run into a problem. I want to do this in my app, and you look it up and you get to know all those people on YouTube that will help you with your problems. And that's how it went. It took a long time, and it was way harder than I thought it was going to be.
What made it harder?
just, I mean, I think anybody that's used Unity, like you'll run it and some dumb thing will happen or not happen. And it's because you didn't click some box or you clicked some other box to mess up the whole thing. And then you'll get one part working and all the other parts will break and they have to go back and fix all those other parts. And there are a lot of game objects, and we elected to make it one scene so we could do those transitions from one time period to the next.
Interesting.
So that, and actually, to tell you the truth, my objects could not really have been, like I was, in the beginning, I was just gonna scan them and use photogrammetry or Blender and make the objects more real. But having there be so many and having it be all in one scene, I could not have had heavy objects. It wouldn't have worked.
Gotcha.
I would have to break it up and then have clunkier transitions.
That's so clever. Yeah. So it makes sense that with all these objects, that if you create low polygon primitives, which just means basic shapes that have, maybe 8 sides, as opposed to trying to create a realistic mesh that would have hundreds and hundreds of faces, all of which would cause additional draw calls. I'm trying to make this so that people who don't do this can understand it, and also people who do it. I said do. So anyway, so then, but the whole idea is that, by having all these many objects populating a room, that you've got performant VR experiences and you can bomb around in there and just pick stuff up and have it tell you a story. But you have another challenge in this, which is every time I pick something up, it starts talking at me. How do you manage maybe it's not complicated, maybe it is. How do you manage the audio so that when I pick something up and then drop it, I don't have a whole room of things chattering at me at the same time?
Well, that was another thing that took forever. Was like, working that out. And honestly, I'm not totally sure we have it worked out, because so you pick something up and it says it's peace, but if you put it down before it's done and you pick up something else and that talks, but then you're like, but wait, I didn't hear all of that one. So we had to make a decision about how many times things are going to repeat. If every time you pick something up, it says the line, it actually it's too much. Like you can't keep doing that.
Yeah.
And there was, at one point, we did have them, and you could go around, pick everything up and have a cacophony.
That's what the inside of my head sounds like all the time. So
then you're probably really tired.
It's true. But
exhausted.
So what did you do to solve it? Did you basically have the object destroy the audio listener, or what did you do technically?
My technical advisor, Dario Laverni, wrote a script, a play only one script, and we just a component on each object to play the audio only once. And then there's an exception. If it's interrupted, it will play again.
Wonderful. Okay, enough tech stuff. Let's go back to the actual way that you decided how to map out the story about your mother and your discovery. We start somewhere. So what did you choose to begin with, and where do you take us on this journey of discovery? In other words, how do you tell a story in a nonlinear fashion that can make sense to the user who is starting to piece together what is going on?
I chose to look at the story. It's sort of nonlinear within a linear structure. I felt that it needed kind of a dramatic arc, and it did need to start somewhere and end somewhere. So I started with the earliest part of her life that I found out about, which is when she left Germany. And then I take you through different chapters of her life when she gets to the United States and goes to school and gets her first jobs. And then as she matures, gets married, starts making art. She makes art through the entire journey. So my idea was that you would kind of journey with her through these life episodes and kind of experience them in real time, she's telling you the story in the present, even though you know it happened in the past. Which I just felt would make it feel more immediate to the participant. And what I really wanted to do was involve a person in the story. When they run the experience, I want people to be involved and to feel agency in one sense, because you're choosing which of these things you're going to pick up. Nothing glows, nothing says, pick me up now, pick me up now. You choose. But your choice is finite. And when your time runs out, you got to move on to the next thing. And I'm not really into VR experiences that everything happens in front of you. You know, everyone chooses to do things, you know, the way they want to do them. Everyone makes their art piece to express their own vision. But I wanted my piece to happen all around you because we're in VR and we have all the dimensions. And I want you to look everywhere. I want you to look behind you. I want stuff to be happening behind you and above you and below you. And I want you to be able to participate and to have agency to interact with things. I think that's an important affordance of VR to take advantage of. And that was one of my goals.
And people love going to science centers and touching everything. It's particularly difficult when I go out with Stephanie to do anything because she has to pick up everything and usually has to throw it. So it's perfect for people like Stephanie. I would also say that it's really, really wonderful to be able to have a medium where set designers and architects can tell stories in new ways. Like, how utterly exciting is that to be able to give you the full tool set to communicate from your expertise and your line of work?
That's what's so awesome about it. I mean, that's what drew me to it, is that it's about objects in space, real objects in real space. It's like, what else is like that? Like, you're putting somebody in a story, in a world that you can build and control. I mean, what is better than that?
When you are a set designer, tell me about that discipline so that we could learn something from you in approaching creating VR experiences.
Well, I'm still doing it. It's kind of what people pay me to do.
Right on.
Until someone wants to pay me to do VR.
Right.
I'm sorry, what? Say that again.
The question is, what can you, an experienced and professional set designer, tell us about your craft that we can carry over into VR development and better understand our craft?
I think about this a lot. It's that idea of the full roundness of the world. So if you watch a TV show or a film, you're seeing it in 2D, right? But somewhere in your mind, you know that the real environment where these actors are performing is a real room, right? The room exists in 3D, and it probably only exists for the duration of the scene that they're shooting. You know, this room that we create is for a brief period for the thing to be made, but it lives forever on TV, on video, which I think is really interesting. So the way I feel about VR and creating VR is that as a creator, you can just let go of that 2D instance of it. Just let go of that. And you can just be in the 3D action of making the scene. You don't have to even think about editing in 2D. Does that make sense? Like that
totally.
2D is just gone.
I think you're right about this VR stuff. Yeah, I sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Please finish your thought.
No, just you're in the immediacy and the action of the 3D. And that is what I want people to think about, that I see. I mean, I see a lot of VR like you do.
Yeah.
And I just kind of see people not thinking about that and not taking advantage of it where they can, that you are in a 3D world. People are so used to imagining 2D entertainment. Just let it go.
And it's, I mean, yes, that I would argue that that's the reason that this festival exists, is to understand new forms of expressing art, stories to each other, and how an embodied spatial media affords us maybe more efficient or unexpected ways that can disarm us, because they're not, I'm going to lay back on this cinema chair with a bowl of popcorn and be entertained at. But we often consider media as though it is an ocular and audiovisual format. But the body is a very, very nuanced and complex organism. And there are so many other extrasensory cues that are working in concert to create a mimetic, powerful sense memory. And that is the potential of this medium. And a piece like yours that is able to distill that down to what appears to be a simple interface between one and the other is actually the perfect example of how to use the medium, because I wholly believe that this is one of suggestion. You cannot endeavor to be the whole of the experience by being photorealistic, and you will always fall into the uncanny valley. But when you can incept into the mind just enough to let the brain awaken and the mind awaken and the whole soul body connection awaken, then I think you are actualizing what the potential of this spatial media is.
That was beautiful. That was so great. Beautifully said. I feel seen.
Yeah, well, me too. I like I said, the whole notion of object-oriented ontology, which is the meaning that objects can afford, that we have often perhaps misunderstood, is one I'd like people to explore. And a piece like Belongings is a doorway into that precise line of inquiry. So, Carol, thank you so much for your time and for being here and for flying to LA for FIVARS and helping me wrap cables and just being a generally awesome human being, and for teaching us what you know, and or at least giving us an insight to what we can learn.
Well, it was an honor to be selected for FIVARS, and I'm really glad I was able to go out there and meet you and Stephanie in person and just take part in the whole festival. It was a really great experience.
Thank you. We look forward to your future work, and good luck at Rain Dance, which I know you're going to be in next week. And in the meantime, thank you everyone for being at our talks today, and we'll see you during the rest of the show. Take care out there.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.